We start this hour of BNC Live with breaking news. Comedian Bill Cosby is now a free man after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court vacates his sexual assault conviction. This is new video of Cosby arriving at his home outside of Philadelphia in Elkins Park. The court's decision made way for his immediate release from prison. Today's ruling was based on the fact that the prosecutor who brought the case was bound by his predecessor's agreement not to charge Cosby. Thanks for joining us for another hour of BNC Live. I'm Brittany Jones in for Laverne McGee. Lisa Bloom, who represented at least 3 of the women who brought accusations against Cosby, had this to say.
Well, I'm glad he got some time served. I really am. But if you think, I believe it's more than 60 or 70 women in total have accused him. He got to have a good long life of wealth and privilege before he was held accountable for his crimes. So it was only a very tiny, tiny measure of the justice that he should have received.
And BNC has complete live team coverage. We have BNC's chief legal correspondent, Dr. Laura McNeil, standing by alongside attorney and former deputy district attorney of Fulton County, Keith Lamar Jr. They'll break down legal analysis of this decision. We start with BNC correspondent Dre Clark, though, who is live outside of Cosby's house. Dre, good afternoon. Well, right now we'll check in with Dre a little bit later, so we'll stick around here with Dr. Laura here on my left and Keith on the right. Both of you, obviously, big deal for us today, big news out of Philadelphia. So let's talk about what's the latest with this. Bill Cosby arriving home, now a free man. We saw someone, either family members or something like that, hugging him outside of the home. But let's talk about what this decision means for the court to make sure they decide to overturn this. And Dr. Laura, we'll start with you.
Essentially, this decision is a huge blow, Brittany, to the Me Too movement. This is one of the first significant rulings in the midst of that movement, holding a sexual predator accountable for his actions, in this case being Bill Cosby. It also is an important lesson about the importance of following the procedures that are in place. The fact that this conviction has been overturned based on this prosecutorial agreement not to prosecute is something that could have been avoided. So a very disappointing day for those victims, but obviously a victorious day for Bill Cosby.
And Keith, let's get your reaction to this.
Well, I think, like he said, it is something to learn from this. I know that the prosecutor meant well as far as trying to go after Bill Cosby. I know that he was trying to fight for the victims. I understand all of that. I understand the technicalities in looking at this case, though. And even in 2018, when it happened, knowing that he had those type of other witnesses coming in, I knew that could be a problem on appeal. So I hope that people learn. I hope that the victims of this do not feel discouraged that they came out. I feel that they still should be commended for coming out. I think that more people should come out as well. If something happened to you today, say it today. Don't wait 20 years where the evidence can be a little foggy. Come out today and say something today.
And Dr. Laura, what is this agreement that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is referring to in their decision to overturn?
Yes, and I want to commend Attorney Lamar for encouraging a lot of victims that are discouraged to still continue to not let their voices be silenced when they have been a victim of assault. And so essentially the agreement they're referring to is the prior DA, district attorney, made an agreement with Bill Cosby that essentially said if he went ahead and testified or shared his testimony for the civil process, the civil charges that had been filed against him, that they would not pursue criminal charges. Well, based on that notion, Bill Cosby said, okay, I will agree to those terms. He said some very incriminating things that were then later used against him in a criminal prosecution. And so essentially the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said that's not fair. That violates his due process rights. You cannot make those types of agreements and essentially renege on them. It's not fair, and it goes against the principles of fair play and fairness in the process.
And so with the court ruled Cosby cannot be retried on these same charges. Please explain why. Keith, you can take this one.
Well, at this point, it's double jeopardy. This man has been tried twice already. We've seen all the evidence that has been presented, and now at this point, he's been appealed by the Supreme Court. So, no, at this point, I would say that he's not going to get tried again. And it's double jeopardy. He's been tried on this case, and now, even if you like it or don't like it, it is what it is. We have to live with it and hopefully learn from it.
And at this point, I mean, you're looking at the accusers. I know with the last case, it was they came out of before the statute of limitations were up. But talk about, is there some type of way that they would be able to go forward with getting some type of prosecutorial, I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but something, continue to go forward with any more charges that could be presented in the future to get them some type of justice in their opinion? Dr. Laura?
Yes, and so, sorry, I thought it was Attorney Lamar, sorry about that. Yes, you know, if they could find a new plaintiff, perhaps, that the statute of limitations has not run out on and pursue charges, criminal charges, based on that new plaintiff, they would definitely be able to do that. I think at this point, though, it looks like Bill Cosby, based on my opinion, looks like he's home for the long haul. I'm still kind of processing this, to be quite honest, Brittany. I'm just really surprised that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania overturned all those lower court rulings. Mostly my surprise comes from the fact that based on what I've had a chance to read, there was no written agreement in place. I know there was something to the effect that the DA might have signed a press release, but that's not an official prosecutorial agreement. And so I'm just surprised that the Supreme Court ruled the way they did today. And
Keith, let's talk about what the court didn't say, right? Did they give any insight to the credibility of the one accuser in this case, Andrea Castan, where Cosby was convicted of drugging and assaulting?
I don't think they said anything in regards to her credibility. I don't feel like her credibility should be shouted in any means in regards to this overturn. I think it all goes down to how the DA handled the case, how he went about prosecuting the case, and if he followed the rules of law as they're supposed to be held. So if that's the case where you tell somebody, hey, this is not going to be used against you, and if you say this is the purpose of it, and then you use it against them, that is on the prosecutor. That's not on the victim at all. So I don't think they said anything that could discredit her.
And so does this decision mean anything for other women who have to consider reporting sex assault in the future?
You know, are you talking to me?
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
So when I think
of
yeah, when I think about it, I hope that it doesn't. I really pray that it doesn't. As I said earlier, I hope that all women understand that please come out. What we've learned from this, what I've learned from this is that please say it immediately. Don't wait so long. Don't wait till it's close to the statute of limitations where now you're scrambling together and the prosecutor might come through and say something that he should not say. Give the chance for the state to help benefit you while the evidence is fresh. Please come out now while it's strong. Don't lose momentum due to this. It should not cause you to lose momentum. Do not hold your head down low. You did everything you were supposed to do. This happens from time to time, but I feel that the verdict and basically everything that's supposed to come out of the movement is happening. It's happening before our eyes. I think people are learning and changing.
And Dr. Laura, did you want to weigh in on that as well?
No, I just think hopefully this will not, I agree with Attorney Lamar, be a hindrance to people that are victims of sexual assault. This is a unique set of circumstances. It does not mean the legal system will fail us in the future or fail victims in the future. It just means that it's important for DAs when they're pursuing these types of cases to make sure that they follow all the procedural rules and that they acknowledge anything that might potentially be an appeal item later on. So you never want to be in a situation that you set the court up for a successful appeal, meaning the opposing side. So that's unfortunately what happened here today.
All right. Well, Dr. Laura McNeil, our BNC's chief legal correspondent, thank you. And Attorney Keith Lamar, we appreciate your time as well. We'll see you back here probably in our next half hour. And today's decision has been years in the making, and what landed Bill Cosby in prison spans decades. Here's a look at the timeline. Bill Cosby, born William Henry Cosby. He was an American former stand-up comedian, actor, and author who held an active career for more than 6 decades. Cosby, once America's dad, started his career as a stand-up comic in San Francisco in the 1960s. In 2015, Cosby was arrested and charged for drugging and molesting a Temple University employee at his home outside of Philadelphia. The arrest came days before the 12-year statute of limitations expired. In 2018, he was convicted. Cosby was the first celebrity tried and convicted in the Me Too era. In May, Cosby was denied parole after refusing to participate in sex offender programs during his nearly 3 years in state prison. This is the first year he was eligible for parole under his sentence. And look at this. Cosby Show co-star Felicia Rashad tweeted, "Finally, exclamation marks, a terrible wrong is being righted. A miscarriage of justice is corrected." The actors Join us tonight for a special coverage. Bill Cosby conviction overturned will air tonight at 7 o'clock right here Eastern Standard Time. And the search and rescue efforts continue in Surfside, Florida, and the number of confirmed deaths continues to rise. We'll have a live report after a short break.
Very difficult situation. But working collaboratively in a group, trying to attain that goal, and that's to save someone's life.
Sadly, more people have been found in the rubble on day 7 of the search and rescue. 16 people are now confirmed dead. Another 147 others remain unaccounted for. Hundreds of rescuers are working through the rubble at a more intense pace as more heavy equipment is on site. Also new today, growing concerns about the weather. Our Stephanie Bertini has covered this story since day 1. She is live for us in Surfside with more on today's new developments. Steph, what can you tell us?
So among those confirmed dead, a woman named Hilda Noriega. We interviewed her grandson here on BNC a few days ago. At that time, he was talking about the hope he was holding on to. That time, his grandmother was among the number of people unaccounted for. News today that Hilda Noriega has been pronounced dead. Her body has been found and confirmed that she did not survive this collapse. Surely devastating for the family. Noriega's son, the gentleman that we interviewed, his dad is a local police chief here in South Florida. And through social media, the family has asked for privacy. You can imagine how difficult this must be for them and the many other families that have either received that news or are contending with the reality that their day may come where they will receive similar news. Meantime, rescue efforts continue here on the ground. We expect to hear from officials again in the next 2 hours or so, give or take. And we'll be updating you here on BNC what is new, if anything is new. Sometimes officials are updating us and telling us, look, the work continues, but nothing has changed. So that might be what we hear. We might hear that they've been able to find some more bodies and or that news we're all waiting for, that they found someone alive. You know, this type of rescue work is very difficult, and the goal of these workers is to find people and save them. As the days stretch by, the reality, the grim reality that might not be what happens has been surfacing more and more. The reality that this may shift into a recovery effort. At that point, they're just looking for bodies.
And Steph, you've been doing a great job at bringing and sharing those stories of those family members. You talked to a number of them, and sadly, I remember the mom, the daughter of the mom yesterday, who just said she just wants to be able to bury her mother. So tragic. But how is the weather actually impacting today's search? I spoke to the former Miami-Dade County Fire Chief last night, and he says it makes it super difficult for them to get the job done.
It does, and that's been a factor that's come up again and again almost every single day since day 1. Look, the rain has created a lot of issues, and today an especially rainy day, so we expect those issues to be further heightened. You know, they're sifting through this rubble, the remains of the building. You can imagine the type of physical labor that's involved, the machinery involved, and then the layer of the weather having to maybe force them to stop the work intermittently, or just the fact that it's raining on top of them as they're doing this taxing work. It's definitely another issue, and we've heard officials say that the rain has contributed to the bad luck, as they've put it, as they've been working this search and rescue mission. So today, an especially rainy day on top of days and days of rain. So it is surely going to be a factor. We'll hear from officials in a few hours, as I mentioned, and we'll find out just how much of an issue that was with the work today.
And any word today, Steph, on what day 8 may look like? I know they're continuing to just pummel through all of that rubble, but any word on what tomorrow will look like? Will they be shifting any type of gears in terms of their search mission?
I think the next major development is going to be that we will hear that this has changed from a rescue mission to, unfortunately, a recovery mission. And on the ground, I've been talking about that since day one because that's just typical. First, they're going in to save lives, and then eventually there's going to be a shift. And from day one, as you mentioned, I've been here on the ground covering it. When I saw the sheer magnitude of what was left behind and of what had happened, I imagined it would take days and days. And as those days stretch by, the question of how many lives will we save? Can people survive underneath that for an extended amount of time? Look, it's a factor. The good thing, though, that we've heard, the rain, if it is getting in between the cracks and crevices, it could be the thing that could keep people alive because they'd be able, in theory, to drink the water. And that's what we're hoping to hear. Those are the stories, the miracle stories I hope to tell here eventually.
Oh, yes, we are all praying for that. BNC's Stephanie Bertini live for us again in Surfside, Florida. Stephanie, thank you. And next on BNC Live, it's that time of the year on the West Coast, wildfire season. And President Biden is speaking his mind about the money those men and women make for putting their lives on the line. Stay with us.
You should pay them. Last week, I learned that some of our federal firefighters are being paid less than $13 an hour. Come on, man, that's unacceptable to me. And I immediately directed my team to take decisive action to fix it. You know, California and some other places, the drought conditions are twice that's what they were last year. And right now, we're seeing record heat in Portland and across the West.
Well, folks, we know it's hot out there. Today, President Biden cited climate change as a driving factor in the threat of wildfires and the current heat wave scorching western states. Biden met governors of those states in Washington for a briefing on wildfires. He also announced moves to help bolster firefighting resources. That includes various incentives for employees and initiatives to guarantee that federal firefighters make at least $15 an hour this year. And also breaking news this hour, former Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld has died at the age of 88. Rumsfeld oversaw the Pentagon's response to the 9/11 terror attacks during the George W. Bush administration. Years later, he expressed no regrets over the controversial decision to invade Iraq, which cost the U.S. $700 billion and more than 4,000 lives. According to a statement from his family, Rumsfeld passed away surrounded by family at home in New Mexico. And stay with us. We have much more news coming up after a short break. And we're back with breaking news now on BNC Live. The U.S. House just voted to launch a new probe of the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. All Democrats and 2 Republicans voted to approve the special committee to probe the violent attack on January 6th. All no votes came from Republicans. Today's vote comes after Senate Republicans blocked the creation of an independent commission that would have been evenly split between the 2 parties. Well, the Biden administration is hoping to avoid a huge increase in evictions when protections put in place during the pandemic ends next month. BNC's Derek Lewis is live now in Houston, where officials are creating a win-win situation for both landlords and families behind on rent. Derek, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Brittany. So here in Houston and Harris County, they have created this system that allows the separation of processing this money as well as making payments so that people who can get this money, you have the landlords, renters, and the tenants, it allows that process to flow smoothly so that people can get the help and resources that they need. Now, this is all about trying to help families avoid getting an eviction. Now, while also making sure that landlords and renters get their money, the federal government has put aside $46 billion from the American Rescue Plan to give money to landlords and tenants. The financial assistance can also go to what experts are calling diversion programs. The administration says state and local governments need to act fast with the money they have been given.
We are asking everyone to respond with speed and force because there is no alternative. With the CDC moratorium ending on July 31st, we are in a race with time. We must accelerate and expand the efforts of state and local governments, not only to get ERA money out the door to tenants and landlords, but to help those who've become homeless and to prevent racially disparate impacts from evictions across our nations.
Officials say before the pandemic, there was a higher risk of evictions for Black Americans, Black families. So whatever solution they come up with, they want to make sure that reduces, that is rooted in equity, so that this problem that they have of Black Americans being more likely to be evicted will not be a problem, or as likely of a problem, after this pandemic is over. Brittany?
And so, Derek, what will happen to that money if it's not all spent?
Well, they want to make sure that they are doing away with evictions in hopes to prevent that as much as possible. So whatever money is not used by the end of September, all that money will be reallocated to families that need it. Live in Houston, I'm Derek Lewis for BNC.
Derek, thank you so much. And this is a look now from, well, we're going to switch gears a little bit following the breaking news this hour we've been telling you about. Comedian Bill Cosby is now a free man after the Pennsylvania Supreme Court vacates his sexual assault conviction. This is new video we're showing you right here of Cosby arriving at his home outside of the Philadelphia in Elkins Park. The court made way for his immediate release from prison. We have our correspondent headed to his home as well. Now let's get back to our legal panel for an in-depth conversation of this bombshell decision. Dr. Laura McNeil, she is here with me now to continue talking about this. And Dr. Laura, we know everybody's gonna be talking about this for centuries. Unique case. This is something that, again, I keep saying it over and over again, that people are shocked about, but I want to bring this to your attention. Something that I read here specifically. There was no evidence that promise that was ever put in writing. Basically, with this particular agreement, how big of a deal is that if it wasn't put in writing? Is it a shake hand type of thing, or how does this work?
Right, and that's why all the lower courts, Brittany, ruled that the conviction stood, because they said there's nothing in writing. And typically these types of prosecutorial agreements where they agree not to pursue criminal charges are in writing, and the fact that it was not done in writing is very important. And so it's just shocking that they would decide this case, meaning the Supreme Court, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, without something in writing. And even more compelling is the fact that the district attorney at the time's assistant, meaning assistant DA, said that they had no idea or recollection of any formal agreement not to prosecute.
And is this something that people would normally see? To my knowledge, I've never known that you have these kind of off the record agreements, if you will.
Honestly, not in this instance, meaning typically a prosecutorial DA, prosecuting attorney would not be involved to this extent in a civil proceeding where they're agreeing not to pursue criminal charges. It is their job to pursue criminal charges. And the reason this is so devastating, this particular decision, is that in this opinion, the court said that they're barred from a retrial. And so essentially, Bill Cosby is free. And so I just can't imagine what the victims must be thinking that now see this reality that he's home and there's not a whole lot they could do.
And they say that he had to honor his predecessor's promise. Is there ever a chance that sometimes this type of decision can be overturned?
Decision meaning the honoring the previous prosecutor's agreement?
The previous prosecutor's agreement specifically.
No, so essentially, if it's done correctly, these are done in writing. They're certified. These types of agreements are certified by a judge or something. And so it's surprising that they are not, they're honoring something that wasn't done through the official process. And so they could technically try to appeal this Pennsylvania Supreme Court decision to the Supreme Court, but very unlikely that that's going to happen.
And Dr. Laura, you're a prosecutor in this case. What would you do if it were on you to decide whether or not to retry it for the third time?
I think that I would take this as a very big learning experience, one that has dire consequences, and I would make sure that that never happened again. Because the truth is, this DA failed the people of Pennsylvania, and more important, he failed those victims.
And you said that they have to make sure when they decide to do it, they have to do it the right way.
They have to do it the right way. The process has to be fair, and it has to be based on the Constitution.
All right, BNC's chief legal correspondent, Dr. Laura McNeil, weighing in on this for us. Thank you, Dr. Laura. And stay with us. We have much more here. Okay, as the weather continues to remain hot out on the West Coast, the threat of wildfires increases. The biggest fire in California right now is the lava fire, which has grown to over 13,000 acres. Strong winds and dry conditions continue to hamper firefighting efforts. And joining us now from the San Francisco Bay Area is BNC correspondent Ansar Hassan with more. Good afternoon, Ansar.
Yeah, good afternoon. We're in Concord, California, about 30 miles east from San Francisco. Behind me, you can see Mount Diablo, one of the highest points here in the San Francisco Bay Area. All around it, it's all dry. And this dry vegetation is what the big concern is, as if you look over here,
Ansar, there has been a lot of state and federal money given to help with wildfires in California. How has that money been used so far?
Yeah, the fire officials that I spoke with say it's been a big help. They've been able to hire more firefighters, invest in more equipment. The biggest thing they say is they've been able to invest in the drone program. So these drones can go up above, especially in these areas that are really mountainous, and help firefighters plan their attack accordingly. Reporting live, Ansar Hassan, BNC.
All right, Ansar, thank you. Well, coming up in our financial segment, In the Black, we'll tell you about the most affordable LGBTQ plus friendly colleges and universities. Their locations may surprise you. That's next. And welcome back to BNC Live. I believe we're going out live now to Bill Cosby's home, where he's believed to be speaking here shortly. So we know that he was released today. No one expected. We've been talking about this all day long since the news broke. Our Dr. Laura McNeil has been breaking down the decision to overturn his conviction. He spent about 2 years in prison, going on 3 years. And also we know that there are several accusers that came out in this case over the last few years. Bill Cosby serving that sentence, more than 80 years old at this point, being released. We saw him hugging family members or whoever it was, greeting him outside of his home as he returned to the house. We were told that this is unusual, but because of his high profile status, you never know what type of person, these type of people particularly will be ushered straight to their homes because of, the media surrounding the case. And I believe this is him up on our screen right now. We're trying to get that feed up for you. But this was big news today. We've been talking about how the Supreme Court decided to make that decision in the state of Pennsylvania. Sexual assault case, his conviction overturned. Let's now listen in. Hopefully we can get a good shot of this feed. Let's listen in.
Him and Mrs. Cosby. Mr. Cosby has always used his celebrity, his name, his likeness to uplift women. This is a man who refused to perform at the White House with Nixon.
Talk about it.
Nixon put him on a communist list in the 60s, along with so many other great names like Dick Gregory, Jane Fonda. How could a man who was being watched by the FBI every day be raping and drugging women in the 60s or 70s, especially a black man? Today, innocence came to Mr. Cosby with the help of these wonderful attorneys.
Yes, yes.
To his right, you will see Ms. Jennifer Bunjean. She argued the appeal. To my left, you see Brian Perry.
Yes.
To Brian's left, Ashley Cohen.
You better not deal with Gloria already again, or I'm coming on you. No, we sometimes give the stories to the white folks, and we just hope that they tell the right thing, that they do it the right way.
And you see him right there, folks, a slow-moving Bill Cosby, his supporters, his team standing around him, very celebratory about him being freed from prison today. They said a number of things. They said that he was at fault for now being vindicated for what they believe was always him telling the truth to begin with. They called it a hot verdict today and calling him a great American citizen. Even some references to the Cosby Show there. They said that he also was a mentor to other inmates while he was in jail. But if you notice, if you were listening during their press conference, Bill Cosby also didn't speak. He smiled. We saw kind of a smile stare on his face. And when they asked him how is he doing, they just said that his supporters spoke for him and his team, saying that he's just very excited, happy to be home, extremely happy to be home with his family. And they predicted this moment. So there you have it right there. He is being walked into his home right here on your screen. We know he again was released just hours ago and ushered right to his house, and there we see it, folks. We're looking at him walking into his doors. And we want to bring in our BNC's chief legal correspondent, Dr. Laura McNeil. Dr. Laura, obviously this is something that we're seeing all play out right here in front of us. I believe the accusers at home probably are watching too. It's a two-sided thing. You have some people who are celebrating. You have some people who are probably brutally upset.
Yes, and so this has always been a very polarizing situation with this case because he was such an adored father figure on a television show. I mean, I remember rushing home Thursday nights at 8 p.m. to watch The Cosby Show in a different world after. And so a lot of people are still very loyal to Bill Cosby, and they say, and they believe in their hearts that he's not guilty. Then you have the flip side. You have other individuals that believe the testimonies of those 50+ women, believe that where there's smoke, there's fire. And what they see this verdict today, or rather this decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, they see it as a huge miscarriage of justice. They see it as a slap in the face, to be quite frank, to the Me Too movement.
And they said today during that press conference, they said he fought for his vindication. We saw, like we said, a number of appeals, which are always expected in these types of cases. So where do we go from here? We see him, he came out with the supporters. They say we fought for this, but what happens next?
Yeah, and so I want to just say briefly, not only did he fight for this, he was denied parole because he refused to participate in their rehabilitation programs. He refused to apologize. So he has been steadfast and adamant about his innocence. And so now in terms of where do we go from here, Bill Cosby gets a fresh slate. He gets a new start on life. He gets to do a new chapter and just enjoy the remaining years that he has. We know that it's not a big secret. He's aging. Visibly, he looks a lot more weaker and frail than he did prior to entering jail, but that's what's next for him. The question is, what's next for those victims and other women? Will they be hesitant, to be quite frank, to come out?
And Dr. Laura, what does this reveal about our judicial system?
Essentially, Brittany, it reveals that it's not perfect. In one sense, it's a good thing because you want the process to be fair. And if there was indeed a prosecutorial agreement not to prosecute Bill Cosby, then he should not have been prosecuted. That's not fair for him to use, for them to use testimony that he gave thinking he had a legal immunity, and he didn't. And so it speaks volumes about the importance of following procedure, following the process, and maintaining fairness. If not, you're going to have a conviction overturned.
And going back to just thinking about the timeline and how we get here, where were we compared to watching him play out on our TV screen, literally walking into his home?
Yes, and so essentially when the verdict, rather the decision came down, the opinion, it was a pretty quick progression to actually releasing him. A lot of times this process takes a lot longer, but I think because he's high profile, it moves quickly.
Yeah. All right, Dr. Laura McNeil here with me now. We'll be back after a short break with more on this. It's a busy news day here at BNC. This is a look from New York City. We're expecting to hear from civil rights attorney Ben Crump representing the family of 14-year-old Keyon Harrell Jr., the young man falsely accused by a woman for stealing her phone at a Manhattan hotel back in December 2020. Let's listen in.
They were the customers of the hotel. She was not a customer. I don't think we can make that point enough, that the hotel sat idly by while she accused their customers, who happened to be black and minority, of crimes. And they said, we're going to condone the racism. We're going to condone the discrimination. We're going to condone the profiling. And what did they say, Attorney Fempster? Well, just show her the phone.
Right.
As if we have to prove that we're legitimate. It reminds me of George Floyd, Reverend Al, when he telling the police that I'm not that person. I'm not who you think I am. That's what Keyon Harrell Sr. was saying. I won't make my son have to prove he's legitimate just because of the color of his skin. And that's what we're fighting. Attorney Fempster, Attorney Azula, do you all have anything to add? Mr. Ramsey? Okay, at this time, we're going to have you hear from the mother of Keyon Harrell Jr., Ms. Kat Rodriguez, and she's going to read a statement from Keyon Harrell Sr., who, as you all know, is a Grammy Award-winning trumpet musician who's on tour. And then we'll take Reverend Al and my co-counselors, we'll try to answer your questions about just how significant the day was. Ms. Kat Rodriguez.